What's up, guys? This is going to be another Wildstar Livestream highlight video. This time they did a Spellslinger livestream, showed off how the Spellslinger works, and it was pretty neat. I'm not much of a range class kind of guy. I'm not into casting spells really. I'm more of a melee kind of dude. But dude, the Spellslinger looks freaking awesome. They have some abilities that are just off the wall. You got some really high skill capabilities, some nice narrow telegraphs that it looks like it's going to take some skill to use. For all you guys that play mages, I think you're going to love the Spellslinger. They look cool. They've got cool animations. Very excited. I will be making a Spellslinger eventually, but I've said that about every class thus far. So anyway, live stream, I really hope they continually do these. I know they're not going to do them every week when the game actually comes out because they're going to be working on the game and stuff, but I think they should continually do them when they've got like a new patch coming out, like, hey, this is what we're working on with the new patch, and this is what you're going to see. And I don't know, I think it's really cool how we actually sort of like know the developers and know what they're working on, and I like how active they are in the community, because a lot of games, man, you don't even know who the developers are, you don't know what they're working on, they don't say anything. It's like the Iron Curtain, and this is cool. So if anybody at Carbine watches this, please continually do these. And continually be as active as you are now when the game actually comes out, and we'll be good to go. So, yeah, this is what I thought was interesting. There's a lot of pretty funny moments in this live stream. I really like these, so yeah, that's what I thought was interesting. Hope you guys enjoy it, and I'll see you next time. Oh yeah, as always, full link to the live streams down below in the description, so check that out if you want to see the entire thing uncut, and I'll see you next time.
And then in addition to that, I want to thank everybody who took a break from playing the Elder Scrolls beta this weekend to join us for our live stream.
So, but a Spellslinger can be really effective to heal a main tank warrior or an engineer, and if you're skilled, you can also main heal a stalker. Heal a main tank warrior or an engineer.
What did you make here, Mark?
All right, I got a pink Chua with some fluffy ears, a little bit of a mohawk, and a giant handlebar stash.
That looks so good.
It looks so good, I wore this shirt in honor of that Chua.
A little bit of salmon.
As Mark gets into this, he'll start fighting, and you'll see him use that button all the way on the left, that R button. That's his innate ability. And what that's called is Spell Surge. And basically, Spell Surge, once that is activated, he's able to turn it on and off. And when it is activated, it drains his spell power. That's the meter in the middle of the screen above his focus point.
That orange circle.
Yeah, and you can turn it off as well to kind of a little bit of micro if you're a little bit more skilled like me.
And so we didn't used to have the capability for players to turn it on and off. Before, players would just drain their spell power when they used their abilities up at the start of a fight. And this really led them to being a burst up front, but then they didn't have much control of their burst during a fight. So we decided that we wanted to give Spellslingers more control, and we wanted them to decide, like, oh, maybe I don't want to use it at the start, maybe I want to wait till the creature's vulnerable. And this works for healing too, where it's not just dealing damage, but it increases the power of your heals. And it also increases the lengths of some of your CCs.
And so that recharges over time?
It's
just
something
on its own?
Your attacks aren't regenerating it unless you tier them up or use the amp system, but normally spell power just regenerates on its own over time.
And so one of the things I want to talk about specifically is what abilities you're using, Mark. You've built your bar here.
Right, yeah, I have a little bit more of a kind of traditional ranged nuke build. This is kind of more physical based, as the Spellslinger has some access to physical damage and magic damage. So I have abilities like Charge Shot, which is a big charge nuke, Wild Barrage, which is kind of what I'm using here. It's channeled over time, you know, just go guns blazing, deals a lot of damage. And so what this build is really strong for, which you can see here as I'll do it, is has a really long range. I can do a lot of damage to creatures as they're kind of walking over to me.
So what did you just do there? True Shot, it looked like you casted it, but then you could cast it a couple more times.
Yeah, why don't I go ahead and touch on
that
while he focuses on playing. So True Shot is actually an ability that he has to stand still to cast, and it's something that it has a pretty long cast time. So it's really good for pulling mobs, because as they're running at you, you're able to stand still and use that ability. We've talked about the Spellslinger's mobility, but we give them a couple of options for those longer cast times that are stationary for when they have a chance in the fight or to pull mobs. And I think Mark also have touched on something earlier. He was talking about how this is more of a physical build, and that's players might not realize that the Spellslinger is kind of a bit of an elementalist. They have the ability to do things that cast giant fireballs, cast giant frostbolts, and we'll probably see more of that as he gets into some of the content later on.
Yeah. Right. One of the things I want to address here is that we got a couple questions during the AMA about the difference between, we showed the Esper last week, showing the Spellslinger this week, 2 ranged classes, and the question kind of was, you know, what's the difference there? Like, what's the difference between their ability loadouts, between the options that they each have? Like, why would you play one over the other? And so one of the things I wanted to talk about were the differences in the telegraphs that are available to each one.
Yep, and we have a great infographic to show that off.
Yeah, so the Esper, do we want to show first? There we go.
So here's the Esper, and you can see this kind of shows off their different abilities. This is their free-form targeting attacks. These are, you use these and they fire down whatever line that is. And you can see their range kind of ends at that 30-meter mark. They've got some big wide cones. They've got some big AoEs. They've got a little bit of more oddball shapes associated with the Esper. And
so the Esper's got kind of a lot of options between long range, short range. Yes. Pretty cool. So why don't we switch over to the Spellslinger?
And so here's the Spellslinger, and you can see that their range extends quite a bit further than the Espers for some of their abilities. And those ones that are going further are stationary abilities that you have to hold still to cast. But you also notice that their range in general is a little bit tighter. The cones are a little bit smaller. It's more down the pike kind of. Whereas, so not only do these ranges kind of show the difference between the shapes of the telegraphs, but it kind of gives you a key into what the 2 different classes are. So the Esper has a lot of different CCs and pets type things, whereas the Spellslinger has more direct damage over time. They're more about assassinating their targets than doing those different types of utility moves.
You just totally whiffed that shot. That was amazing.
I was trying to look cool.
He's trying to show off the camera really nicely.
Yeah.
That was amazing. And so the Spellslinger, you saw in the graphic that they've got they have the longest range of the classes, right? Is that True Shot that's using that?
That is True Shot.
You were mentioning to me offline that they can actually tier that up to make it even longer.
Yeah, through our ability tiering system, which is a system that we have where you can make certain abilities stronger than other abilities by spending a limited amount of points on them. You're able to make that be even longer than it is right now.
Awesome, awesome. So we're working our way through here. So you're fighting an exile guy right now that looks like he's a stalker, actually, right? That's an NPC stalker.
Yeah, he's got some moves. They're not quite the same moves that our stalkers have, but it's similar type of stuff.
One cool ability I have I'm about to use here in a second, it's Assassinate. It's also a rapid tap. It does increase damage to enemies when they are low health, so it's kind of like a, finish them off type ability.
Like
an Assassinate.
Mortal Kombat style. Finish it. For spells that have effects like fireballs, like ranged casts, does the damage actually happen when you fire it off, or when the cast time's done, or when the animation actually hits the enemy?
So if there's a missile projectile associated with it, the damage is going to be done once that missile hits the target.
So there is a travel time there.
So we have some abilities where they hit instantly, and we have some abilities where it waits till the projectile lands. And we have control over how fast those projectiles go. So if we want something to be really snappy, we can make the missile fly super fast. If we want it to be instant, it could be instant.
Cool.
And if you want something to kind of loft, we have some abilities like that on another class.
So what did you just add to your bar? You said you added some more magic focus abilities.
So I've taken one ability, for example, is Arcane Missiles.
Okay.
This is a channeled. If there are multiple enemies in front of you, the missiles will kind of be split amongst them and kind of do damage equally. If you only have one enemy in front of you, all of those missiles will kind of be centered in one big missile towards that enemy. Also have abilities like Ignite, it's a damage over time. Flame Burst is like a proc. If I crit, I can get another shot off that does a big spike of fire damage.
And so this build that he has right now, it's fairly mobile. Magic missiles, he's going to have to stand still as he's firing it off, but his other abilities, he's able to move around.
Wow, look at all these Chumpacabras you're killing.
He's also got a root on his bar that's going to hold them in place.
Yes, I do.
Ooh, so he'll be able to move around and
totally
kite.
puked on me.
Those little guys are
you're
all over
attacking.
him.
Oh god, watch out! Oh no!
Oh, you just made somebody wake up.
I thought that was a rock there. I didn't even notice. That was awesome. So you just you've killed these chompies, but then attracted this giant.
Some more. You better
Whoa,
peace
man,
out.
you're just
I'd
running
say
into
peace
everything.
Out.
Oh, you've been slowed.
I'm gonna have to chuck a little deuce here and come back for vengeance.
We were doing so good in rehearsal.
Yeah, well,
you know what?
And
It's
now
not that bad. He made it out with.
You
his
did
skin.
survive, and so in terms of, let's talk about the travel abilities a little bit, because you got a couple ways to escape as a Spellslinger. You were gating before, which you were using as a stun.
Right.
But you can also use that to get out of combat, too,
Yes.
right?
Very handy in PvP when you're trying to run away from people.
Yeah, it doesn't look like he has too much mobility on his bar right
Yeah,
now.
I've taken
but
for something that's a little bit different.
I'll call out the different abilities that he has. So he has Gate,
Sure.
which is that forward stun. He has Void Slip, which is going to move him into another dimension almost, where no other enemies can see him unless they're also in the
I want a
void.
piece of this guy.
He has an ability called it's going to make a big AoE around him that increases his speed. I totally
blanked on the name
that
there.
one.
That's
I
fine.
did. It's called Void Pact. Now I remember. But basically, it's going to increase the speed for him and his allies that are close by, which no other class really have the ability to that.
You just got tethered there. This is actually a good example. We haven't shown tether,
Yeah.
but we've talked about it a little bit. So you see that line? That was actually preventing him from
He
going
would not have
outside
been
of
able
the
to
little
get away
circle.
from there.
But
Yeah.
I killed it with some good aim, and
Nice job. Does the Spellslinger have higher DPS because they have light armor than, say, a medium armor class?
In general, yeah. Because they have that lower survivability, they're able to dish out more damage. It's kind of the way that they counter those heavier classes.
Awesome.
it ends up kind of being pretty even.
Yeah, we want it to be even in terms of kill times versus each other. So like a Spellslinger versus a medium armor class, the kill time should still be generally around the same time.
Right.
It's just that the Spellslinger is able to do more damage in a shorter period of time.
Cool. And the medium and heavy armor can maybe, pull a couple more creatures and kill more of them faster.
And our classes that have heavy armor, they have options, stances that increase their damage while reducing their mitigation.
Yeah. Actually, a related question that we have on chat right now is from Mitgel, who wants to know, so the Spellslinger has light armor. Do they share gear with the Esper, or is there overlap there?
There's definitely overlap for this rather stuff that you're going to find through leveling. They're both wearing light armor, so they're both going to be looking for that. Their weapons are different, so you're never going to be rolling on the same weapons as a Spellslinger and an Esper. And also the primary attributes that you're looking for are going to be different. So as an Esper, you're going to be wanting Moxie, which is going to increase your assault power, and you're going to be wanting Insight, which is going to increase your support power. Whereas on a Spellslinger, you're going to be looking after Finesse for your assault power. Both healers are going to be wanting Insight, though.
And so you've got primary stats that are different for each of them. And so if you're just building straight for your primary attributes, you have different gear that you're looking for. But each of those stats, if I understand it correctly, they still have something that they do for you. So you definitely want those stats too.
That's right. So all the attributes are useful to all the classes. So, for example, the Spellslinger might be getting critical strike from his Moxie stat, even though he's not getting assault power from it. But in general, you're going to want those assault power stats more than those secondary ones.
All right, so I'm going for the Esper's a little bit more stationary, so I'm going for a little bit more mobility. I'm going to try and just be keeping out of his attacks as much as possible.
Okay.
I also have Assassinate. I took Assassinate back on my bar to hope to try and finish him off when he is low health. I have my Flame Burst for some proc stun, and I'm also going to pick up a
Secret weapon. We're not going to talk about this because we don't want him to hear us.
We don't want
'cause
Nick
he
to
can
know
hear
what
us
we're doing.
right now, and
He
we
can
don't
hear.
want-
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just going to pick up a little something extra.
All right. So are you ready to go?
Let me make sure I have
Wait.
tiers.
So you're
Good to
tiering up your
go.
abilities, which gives them
Yes.
extra damage. We're not at a level where we can do any of those major tiers, so you're
Right.
not going to get special effects off of them, but you definitely are going to get more damage out of it.
Yes,
Yeah,
we're real close.
Those start coming
so
unlocked.
All right, so we're going to challenge him to a duel.
Let's do this.
All right,
See
there's a
little
pretty duel flag. Here we go. Ready?
Count
4,
down.
3, 2, 1.
All
Here we
right,
go.
so Mark's going to start off with a Knight, which is one of your best damaging abilities over time. He stuns him. He's got to watch out for that Geist, which is that Geist that's out from the Esper is actually taunting him, reducing the amount of damage that he's doing to the Esper.
It looks like you got Nick's shields down before he got yours down, so that's a good
That's
start.
good. And he's also, since Mark's build is pretty mobile, he's able to move out of these telekinetic storms that Nick is throwing down.
That's the one with the swords flying down from the sky.
That's one of his finisher abilities.
That
So
one
Nick
right there.
just used his
Innate.
innate ability, which means he's not going to be taking any damage. He's going to be generating a lot of side points.
Oh, I
I've
see
gotta
his
be-
shields are regenerating right
Yep.
there.
He's firing it off.
Very solid.
It's getting pretty close. He got his shields back, and so now we're
Whoa,
hoping that Mark can
Oh,
finish
you're
him
pretty
off with
low, but
Assassinate,
so is he.
It's not quite as low as we'd like.
Uh-oh. Oh, you're sitting in the telegraph.
Getting too close.
This is getting pretty close. Can you fire off Assassinate in time?
Oh, it's close.
Oh.
Can you finish him?
This is so close.
Who won? Who won? Who won?
He won. It looks like Nick won.
Man.
Oh, that
Wow.
was super
That
close.
was
Okay.
about-
So, good job, guys.
I
good
think
job.
You did a good try. But,
Yeah,
you know,
you
I
know.
think we should go again.
Given their ability to kite, do Spellslingers tend to suffer from lower DPS compared to the Espers that have static nukes?
So that's kind of going to depend on your limited action set. So if you are building yourself around full mobility, you're not really taking any of those stationary abilities, your DPS is going to be a bit lower than somebody who's using those stationary abilities.
Okay.
We kind of balance the entire game based off all the variables that you could think of. Like if an ability can be used on the move, is there a cast time? What's the length of the GCD? We kind of assign point values to all of those things, and then we put that into this big Excel sheet that we use to balance the game. And then as players give us feedback, we kind of reevaluate how we value those different effects.
So we're going to go ahead and duel. We'll see how Nick adjusted his build, and we'll see how you adjusted your build, and then we'll kind of talk about it afterwards. All right, here we go.
With that ignite,
I tried to
Fired a little too early, yeah. That was a nice concentrated blade there from Nick.
Yep.
Oh.
Oh,
He just
got
interrupted.
knocked out of it.
Yeah.
Totally interrupted me.
Mark was trying to use spatial shift there to switch the two of them and confuse Nick. Didn't work out though.
Phantasmal
It
armor.
would have been great if it had, but
Nick was using phantasmal armor that gave him some interrupt armor and some absorption effect.
there we go. There we
There we
go.
go.
All right, so now Nick's a little bit disoriented. He's kind of walking around. He doesn't.
And Disorient
can't
actually
aim.
randomizes your movement keys.
Yes, it does.
And
So it makes it kind of difficult to stick on a target when you've been disoriented.
it's looking
So
pretty
it
good.
looks like Mark is using up his spell surge now. He's able to maybe try to finish him off with a nice combo here.
Nice stun, doing a lot of damage there.
Oh, he just got knocked down. Luckily, that cooldown on
this is
Spectral
pretty
Form
close.
is pretty long, so it doesn't look
There,
like
done.
Yep,
It's
very
done.
good.
Nice job. You have redeemed yourself.
I think we're lucky that the Esper didn't have his cooldown back up for Spectral Form.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
might have taken me if that were the case, but
So good job, guys. Good job. Good fight.
So yeah, just to recap, what I did a little bit differently is I took phase shift there, which when I cast it, it switches positions, it disorients him, makes him he can't move around as well. It also makes me a little immune while I'm casting, so I can kind of interrupt him a little bit. And then I also took Astral Infusion, which is a support ability, which heals me for health, and it also gives me interrupt armor. So I was hoping to avoid some of his interrupts.
Nice, nice. Well, that seemed to have worked out pretty well for you.
Yes, it did.
A lot of MMOs make spec switching into a gold sink, and that amps take a little more effort than your limited action set to reset them. Is it feasible that you are switching your amp set constantly multiple times a day, or is that going to get prohibitively expensive?
So if you were just using one loadout and you were respecking multiple times a day, that is going to get pretty expensive. But we do have a system in place where you're able to have multiple loadouts.
And
so
this is not in beta yet,
This
so
is
nobody's
this is
seen
not
this
in
yet.
beta yet, but it's going in pretty soon. And so by the time you're level 20, you're going to have access to a second loadout. So then you're going to be able to set up a whole different abilities loadout. You're going to be able to set up a whole different amp loadout. So and you can switch between the two of them
For free.
For free. Instantly, as long as you're outside of combat.
Okay, and so you can have multiple amp setups, multiple ability tier setups, limited action set setups, and you can swap between them.
Right.
And there's two that you by 20 you can have two of them, and then there's possibly more that you can get later on.
Cool. So it will cost gold if you want to reset a specific
Yeah, the
loadout,
entire loadout.
but you can have multiple loadouts
Yeah.
set up that you can switch between.
And it only costs gold to reset your amps. The rest of your stuff, it doesn't cost.
You can do that on the fly. Does the Spellslinger have some melee stun abilities? Things that can work up close to stun someone who got into melee range, or maybe escape from it, I'm guessing?
So that's actually Gate, which we've been showing off for
Sure.
a while. It's something that dashes you forward 20 meters and it stuns anybody in the path. So as a Spellslinger, one of the basic but satisfying combos that you can do early on is if an NPC comes up close to you, they're telegraphing, you gate right through them, you turn around, swing around, fire off your big shots.
Awesome. Yeah. So the especially, I mean, the mobility of the Spellslinger definitely means that you're not screwed if someone gets into melee
Yep.
range.
Yep.
All right.
Very
so
slippery. All right, so for our tank, we have a warrior spec tank, played by one Tim Lang, one of our dungeon designers. Moving on,
look at that sweet sword. Oh man. So this is our second boss of Stormtalon, also known as Ethros or Athros, depending on how you pronounce that AE thing. So we are gonna walk everyone through this fight as you guys fight it.
Right.
I'm gonna let you, Hugh, take the lead on this fight, and we'll work our way through it. And so I know that yesterday when we practiced this, there were a couple wipes. So we'll
Like
see
I said,
how this goes.
I mean, Scooney, he's just dragged. he's too heavy, man. We got to carry him.
All right, so here we go. They're gonna pull the boss.
Yep. So we got our warrior tank getting in there. He's trying to keep that aggro on Atheros. We do have an aggro system in Wildstar, so as a DPS, you're going to want to be careful not to do too much damage too early.
Oh, get out of
Whoa,
that.
that's a big telegraph.
Mark just dodged that telegraph. That's a pretty
Last
devastating telegraph. If you stand there, you could be taken from full life
so-
to big dead.
And so the beginning of this fight obviously is just, attack and stay. Oh, well, something's about to happen.
Yep. So Aethros just dispersed. He created 3 adds, and now as the DPS and anybody that has interrupts here, they're not going to want to use up their CCs on these creatures because they're going to want to save it for a little bit later in this fight.
Do we want to explain real quick about interrupt armor? Because that's going to come into play in a couple seconds.
Sure. Interrupt armor is one of the features that we have. It's basically a way that you can shield yourself from CC effects. A lot of our creatures use it, especially in dungeons. And this specific Aethros, if Mark is able to select him, if Mark's able to select him, you can see in the top up there, there's a little number 2. That means Aethros has 2 interrupt armor. It's going to take 2 CCs to get through that interrupt armor before he's actually able to be stunned or knocked down or anything.
There we go.
There they go.
So they worked as a team. They managed to interrupt him, and now he's vulnerable. His health bar is purple. He's taking more damage as long as he's vulnerable.
And if they had not interrupted that cast, he would have gotten that cast off and maybe wiped the group.
Yes, he would have been a pretty
that would have been a
devastating
wipe.
AoE if they had not interrupted that.
Only the heaviest of classes may have had a chance to
And we're
survive
still
that.
tuning all that stuff, so as we go through beta, the damage might not be quite where we want it to be.
Right.
But
Get out of the way for that.
oh, and they managed to get out of the way again. Everybody's doing pretty good. In warm-ups, they had a few deaths, but right now they're looking pretty solid.
And so I think the interesting thing about that part of the fight specifically is that our dungeons really, we want to require a lot more coordination between people. We want communication to be really important, especially because you can choose to see other players' telegraphs. We want to make sure that everyone's communicating to each other what they're fighting, what they're about to do, especially like at that Aethros part, everyone needs to time their crowd control at the same exact time.
I just noobed it up and totally used my interrupt right there.
And you wasted your interrupts. So do you think the group's going to have enough then?
I think it would be good, but I got a little trick up my sleeve here.
Okay.
Watch this.
What's gonna happen?
So instead of having to run through this car wash, he's actually used Void Slip to pretty much evade all of those telegraphs along the way and get up there first.
And now I got to rely on my buddies.
Now you're the first one up there, but you kind of got to wait for everybody else to show up.
At least he's able to get some deeps on the target.
So you don't have your crowd control there, but does everyone else have enough to interrupt him? Yes, they do. Okay.
That's a good
job, buddy. Way to carry me that time.
Nice job, guys. Nice job.
It all comes around.
I'm actually going to... so it looks like they're burning down the boss pretty fast now.
Yes,
so
we are.
it looks like you guys might be okay this time. Last time did not go so well, so I'm actually pretty impressed with your performance today.
We gotta redeem ourselves from last week's performance.
And Scooney didn't die. I hope he can hear me right now. Scooney did not die.
CR Beats though, almost going down.
Oh,
they're about to. Oh, took some damage.
Ton of damage coming out. Beeps has no shields, but it looks like it's not going to matter.
This looks pretty.
There we go.
Ooh,
Oh, and a survey popped up. We can fill out how much fun we just had. When you heal a damaged ally, can you only heal their health, or can you also heal up their shield?
So that's going to depend on the type of heal that you have.
Okay.
So the Spellslinger specializes in standard health healing, whereas other healers might have some shield healing capabilities.
Might those be some healers we haven't announced yet?
That might be a healer that we
Interesting.
haven't announced.
Interesting.
Some redacted action.
So we might have to revisit that at a later time.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So XR System wants to know, can you explain a little bit more about Void Slip? Is it actually a phased instance, or how does that actually work?
Yeah, it is actually a phased instance. So
well, it's not, you don't load into a new instance, but it is a phase. It's what we call
it's
as a phase.
seamless, and you go into there and you can't see anybody else that's outside of there, and other people that go into the void will also see you. So there can be situations in PvP where you're seeing an enemy Spellslinger go into the void at low health. You could go in right after them to try to finish them off.
And kill them inside the void.
Which is a pretty righteous kill, because they think they've gotten away, and then you chase in, and then you just show them what's what.
And everybody outside the void just sees this body come from nowhere.
So can you, we don't actually have a specific question about, actually, that's the question I was just going to ask. Gorilla Wizard wants to know, so can you go in the void and then, stay in there for a while? Is there anything in there besides yourself?
So at first, you're only going to be able to stay in for a few seconds using our Void Slip ability. There's also an amp that makes you cast Void Slip for free, but you can tier it up so that you go up to maybe 7-ish seconds. This is something that we're going to tweak, because 7 seconds in a different phase is actually a pretty long time, I would say. So, but right now, it's about 7 seconds that you can be in there. You can heal yourself, you can cast any of your abilities, whatever you want, as long as you're in there.
So we're not looking at hey, Sunday night, I'm going to have a Void party. We're just all going to slip into the void and hang out there for a couple hours.
It's a little bit too dangerous for them to stay in there too long. One thing that's actually really cool about the ability as well is that you can reactivate it to come out early. So you can kind of bait out enemies' powerful moves by waiting for them to use it and then go in to avoid the big damage and then come back out immediately and be ready to just keep going.
That sounds like almost a weird version of stealth where you can't see what you're doing necessarily, but if you're really good at it, you can pop into the void, pop out somewhere else, and be right behind the other guy.
Yep, absolutely.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's got a ton of uses other than just to kind of escape.
This is a good question. Fishing Guy 918 wants to know, Are there or will there be abilities that can do direct damage instead of hitting the shield that goes straight through the shield or deplete the shield?
Yeah, on some of the classes they have abilities that penetrate shields. There's actually some abilities that disable shields altogether so that all the damage that target takes is going to go straight to their health.
Yep. Cool. And there's also a stat called Strike Through, right? That goes.
Strike Through is actually to avoid Deflect Chance. Deflect Chance is one of our other stats that you have, which it's basically a way to make. The reason why we have stats like Strike Through and Deflect in the game is because we're making an RPG and we have a lot of gear that we want you to go out and gear up for. And so both of those are going to be the way that you overcome bosses, overcome other players, that sort of thing.
Gotcha.
I think we do have a stat that is going to be actually Shield Pierce, though.
We do have a Shield Pierce stat that you're able to get solely through the AMP system currently. We'll see about maybe rolling it out through other places, but right now it's pretty much just through the AMP system.
Cool, cool. Altraz110 asks, does the something does the Spellslinger's innate interrupt casting, or can you actually charge an ability up and then hit innate while you're casting it?
So this is something that we've been tweaking as we've been moving forward.
We actually had a conversation about this earlier this week, I think.
Yeah, in the last round of beta, it was actually set up so that you couldn't cast it while you're already casting another ability, but we've changed that so that you're able to cast it while casting other abilities, and then it has a little bit of a cooldown after it wears off. So we want it to be really smooth. We want it to be it shouldn't impede your gameplay, your regular rotation.
I think the way you guys explained it to me, you can't do it during a channeled ability that's doing constant damage, right?
You can turn it on during
but it won't affect that
bonus.
But if you're doing something that charges up like Charge Shot or True Shot, it will affect that because the cast happens at the end.
Right. You have to do it before you engage the ability currently.
Gotcha. Okay. With crowd control, can you stun lock a pile of enemies when you've got a party with tons of crowd control?
So I think that's interesting. So we do have the breakout gameplay, so you are able to kind of get out of a lot of the CCs early. Some of the harder ones, we are implementing diminishing returns so that, if you got 4 people stunning you, eventually just going to do nothing. That being said, a skilled group who times their abilities and their CC well, they can do a lot of damage, but that's pretty high end on the team coordination scale.
Yeah, and just to touch on this, the diminishing returns is only in PvP.
Right.
It's not in PvE. So yeah, you can keep bosses, enemies down, but they usually have interrupt armor, so it's not going to be that feasible. And also your cooldowns on these abilities are pretty long. And then the other thing is, I saw some people talking about like how do diminishing returns work in Wildstar. And the way that it works in Wildstar is basically things like stuns and knockdowns are categorized into the same group. And so if I hit you with a stun that lasts for 4 seconds. The first time I hit you with that, it's going to last a full 4 seconds. But if somebody else hits you with another stun in those within 15 seconds, it's going to be reduced. So it's only going to last for 3 seconds.
Right.
Next time 2, next time 1, and then
nothing.
Nothing will affect you at all.
Cool. So we just put diminishing returns into beta. I think this is the first time that we're testing it out, and so that's obviously going to get tweaked as we keep playing with it.
Yeah, we'll tweak things like the timer, the cooldown, how many CCs before it goes to nothing, all those.
But I think with the breakout gameplay, you guys made a good point where some of our crowd control, like a knockdown, for example, you can dash right out of it
as long as you save your dash token.
Yeah, and so some of that crowd control, there's never a point where you're just sitting there like, well, I'm just gonna sit here and wait.
Yeah, like a tether, you're still able to move around. You're just stuck in that area. If you're subdued, you lose your weapon, but you're able to go and pick it up. There's always some sort of gameplay associated with it.